If your show aired in the early 2000s, congratulations, you had a TCG. Did it matter if the card game in the show actually made sense? Absolutely not. For some reason, none of these shows played their own card games correctly. Cardcaptor Sakura barely acknowledged the TCG existed. Yu-Gi-Oh! Straight up made rules up on the spot. And then we talk about the star of today's video, Duel Masters somehow made things even more confusing. Like, what is that? How did he do that? Y'all saw that, right? Why does his hand have aura? And why does he automatically know what he's about to top deck? Bro, he's cheating. This is, All I'm gonna say is my hand never had aura when I played this game. Where is the ref? I didn't know I was playing against the main character. And see, it was moments like that that made people think Duel Masters was just a Yu-Gi-Oh clone. But it wasn't. It was actually based on Magic the Gathering, which means the anime is a wild mess of strategy talk that no one really understood at our age. And I don't want to speak in absolute, so maybe I'm just speaking for myself when I say this. I would not have understood Magic the Gathering as a kid, point blank. That to say, me as a kid, I wasn't like stupid or anything in that nature, but if I'm being completely transparent, I was a dumb kid. And to prove that point, I used to think bench was a cuss word, like the word bench. Like you sit on a bench. I used to think that was a cuss word. I used to say, what the bench as a kid, or you're being a dumb bench. Like I legitimately thought I was being so edgy as a kid, but I was just being dumb. And don't get me wrong, if you were the super genius that understood how to play aggro control combo in mid-range in the 4th grade, my hat's off to you. But most people I knew were not doing that. Like me and little Timmy from the block, we're not moving like that back in the day. Nowadays, I somewhat understand how magic works, but I'm no expert. But me as a kid, yeah, there's just no way that was happening. And because of that, Duel Masters was viewed that way to me to some extent. So today, let's talk about the era where every show required a TCG and how Duel Masters was accidentally a product of that system while it shouldn't have been. Oh, also the egregious amount of gang violence in a world ruled by card games. So, hey, I'm Remy, and I just want to know, has anyone checked on Duel Masters? And if not, let's. To understand why Duel Masters confuses everyone, you have to understand where it came from. Most people assume it's a Yu-Gi-Oh ripoff because, well, it looks like one. Spiky-haired protagonist, check. Dramatic duels, check. The main character's parent deciding to get milk and cigarettes and never coming back, also check. A card game where the rules seem to change mid-match, absolutely check, check, and check. But here's the twist. Duel Masters wasn't just a knockoff. It was actually a Magic the Gathering spinoff. Wizards of the Coast, the same people that made Magic, wanted to expand into Japan. But Magic, well, was a bit complicated. And Pokemon TCG over in Japan was dominating everything, so they had to come with a different approach rather than just importing Magic. So initially, they thought the best way to approach the situation, well, was by advertising via a manga. And in Japan, that just made complete sense. So the first actual appearance of Shobu was playing Magic and not Duel Masters, which is incredibly interesting. And this was clearly the play for a little bit. But around 2002, Wizards of the Coast decided it was done pushing Magic and it decided it wanted to become its own thing. So they simplified the game, added some anime flair, and then suddenly, Duel Masters was born. Instead of playing like Yu-Gi-Oh, it played more like Magic. But in an anime where kids would top deck whatever they needed because their aura farmed a bit harder than their opponents, I'm still not over that. Recently, I've gotten into TCG games myself, and just seeing people top deck whatever cards they needed genuinely makes me mad. I've been playing Marvel Snap for a minute now, and I've recently gotten to the Digimon TCG game because of the Digimon franchise retrospective. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think it's fun. And just seeing people top deck whatever they need, whenever they need it because their hand glowed a bit brighter, irksome. That made me crash out a bit. I'm being completely honest with you. If someone did that in the middle of a game, we might have to fight. Like, just point blank. You're not gonna aura farm a top deck out of me. Legitimately, I'm about to crash out. Like, you're not gonna do that. Regardless, I guess we gotta talk about this show and why they can aura farm with their hands like it's solo leveling or something. The Duel Masters anime actually kind of unhinged. Most card game shows are guilty about taking themselves a bit too seriously. The biggest offender in this category would definitely be Yu-Gi-Oh! OG Yu-Gi-Oh! For one, Season 0 Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, you already know if you know about that one. But if we're just talking about the card game era, Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, ancient Egyptian reincarnations, Shadow Realm, all the murders that happen in that show. If we really think about it, Bakura is like a mass murderer that just gets away with it. But, you know, that's another conversation for another day. But thankfully, Duel Masters was self-aware from the start. Shobu, our main character, wasn't a chosen one, wasn't possessed by an ancient pharaoh. He was just a kid who played card games a bit way too much. And as I mentioned earlier, the most MC thing that happened to him is that his dad abandoned him for the card game. Which in actuality should have made him hate the card game, if I'm being completely honest. Or bare minimum, want to fight his dad with the Duel Master card game or something. You know, me personally, if my dad left my mom to travel the world to play a TCG game, we're gonna have to throw hands. If I ever see him again, tell him to drop the cards. We are just taking this to the streets. None of that card game stuff. We're just fighting.
Come to the street, bro. I will beat your motherfucking ass,
And the dub is full of fun, quirky, stupid stuff like that. It's full of absurd fourth wall breaks, parody humor, and the English dub cranks up the nonsense to 100%. So while Yu-Gi-Oh was no life or death for card games, Duel Masters never took itself too seriously. While the situations they found themselves in as the characters were absurd, obviously, because it has to be entertaining, it was never trying to be, oh, if I don't play this super serious elite god card, the universe will implode and be rewritten by the other evil god card. You know, it was nothing like that. It was fun. Genuinely a fun time. It was dumb, it was brilliant, and it made the card game even harder to understand, which is one of the downsides. And to prove that point, they didn't even call it Duel Masters in-universe. They called it Kaijudo, which confused me as all get out when I was a kid. And granted, the name Kaijudo will come back into play years later. And I mean like literal years later. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay, now that the prerequisites are out of the way, let's talk about gang violence and the lack of stranger danger in the wonderful world of Duel Masters. Shobu is your average kid in an unreasonable, peaceful neighborhood, where the most dangerous thing actually isn't crime. It's middle schoolers forming highly organized street gangs over a card game. And unfortunately for Shobu, his life revolves around that game, Duel Masters. A game where you don't win money, clout, or even basic respect, but some satisfaction from summoning imaginary monsters, because these monsters are in their head. There's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Where they have super advanced 3D technology. They're in their heads. All the VFX they see in this game is in their heads. It's super weird. At the start of our journey, we find Shobu winning a local tournament. He comes out on top, even though his opponent does a little bit of cheating by switching out decks right before the final, which honestly should have gotten disqualified, but you know, I don't know how that tournament worked. And after he wins, he is approached by a guy named Mr. Knight. Now, Mr. Knight is a grown man. A grown man should not be approaching a child to play a card game. We're gonna get that out the way right now. And unfortunately, Shobu, not having a father figure, doesn't know that you should not go to strange locations with grown men you do not know. Thankfully, Knight isn't a complete weirdo, and he just wants to mentor him. Because reasons. But the weird thing about Knight is he has no job, no visible source of income, and once again, he has no real reason to hang around a bunch of these kids. And Knight is an original anime-only character, because a lot of Duel Masters, the anime, was based off of the manga. They just threw Knight in here, and like, that, I don't know what they was doing with his character. It's weird, bro. Knight is so weird. Like, the man is wearing sunglasses inside during the, like, okay, I'm gonna just harp on Knight if I don't stop. Anyway, during the time Knight is mentoring Shobu, he is constantly getting jumped by gangs. And by gangs, I mean local card gangs. Gangy. And it's not like they're just having friendly matches. These are full-blown organizations dedicated to ruining this 10-year-old's life. I don't know if he's 10. I'm assuming he's 10. Regardless, in Season 1, the main gang was Temple, an organization within the Junior Duel Center run by a guy named the Master. And the Master spends his entire time gaslighting a kid named Hakuo to do his evil bidding. And Hakuo is the leader of a gang called the White Soldiers. And I just want to say, a guy called the Master leading an organization called the White Soldiers just feels kind of crazy, like a smidge bit crazy. You feel like you know, like a little bit like side eye. Like it's like, come on, man. Like, you gotta think about Master and his White Soldiers, like a little bit like it's crazy. But you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. Oh, also, the cards are real, by the way, sort of. The gameplay, all the special effects, all that stuff is in the players' heads, but like the monsters they're playing with are kind of real. So there's a whole monster world, but we'll get into later. The game is fake, the cards are real. Let that sink in. And while dueling with the White Soldiers, Shobu and his friends eventually end up fighting Hakuo, and eventually they free him from the gaslighting of the Master. So that's pretty cool. And they become really good friends, until they don't. We'll get to that. So the story continues, things get worse, more gangs show up, and in Season 1.5, or Sacred Lands, Shobu is not feeling good. He's in a card game rut. No top deck wins for him. Deserves it. He deserves no top deck wins. You are cheating. I hate him. No, I don't, but I kind of do. And to get him out of this rut he currently finds himself in, he finds solace in one of his father's diaries. In said diary, there are no hints to where he could potentially be, so that's useless. But it does tell him ways his dad got better at the card game he left him and his mother for. Still, like, bro, burn that book and find your dad just to fight him. Like with your hands, not with cards. But he doesn't take my advice, and he decides to take this as a sign to go on a journey to get his mojo back. Akin to an Austin Powers, but with a TCG. And like any good Duel Master season, along his journey of self-discovery, he gets involved with another gang. The gang this season is called Ploop. And can we just take a second to appreciate the name Ploop? It's so impactful. Ploop stands for Powerful Loyal Order of Princes. This show is so much fun, but it's so stupid, but it's so much fun. They've got uniforms, theme music, and personal vendetta against a child whose biggest crime is being slightly better than them at card games. Their goal? To use the creatures that are alive in the cards to take over the world with dark energy. What is dark energy? With dark energy. This world Shobu lives in has a real issue with card game related crimes, but nobody cares because reasons. But of course, Shobu won't let this crime go unpunished. He's the main character after all. So he rises to the occasion. He trains harder, gets stronger, and keeps winning. But at what cost? His friends are either constantly in danger or being kidnapped by dudes in trench coats and crazy hair, who take this game way too seriously because they gotta rule the world with dark energy, whatever that is. But Shobu, being his father's child, throws his hesitation of keeping his friends in danger to the wind because they know at the end of the day, if it's about Duel Masters, they'll forgive him or ignore any of the dangers that come with hanging around him for the love of the game, baby. Oh, but he does also stop the princes at the end of the day and saves the monster world from the dark energies of their cases and their card games and stuff. And yay, the world is saved! Yes, what's so exciting? Why am I doing this voice? Anyway. We're now at the final season that was dubbed for the English audience, Duel Masters Charged. This season starts off with a time skip. Our main character has been gone for almost half a decade. It looks the exact same. At the rate he's going, he's gonna be a high school dropout or be 18 as a sophomore. Either options maybe actually work out for him, because in this world you can clearly get by just being a great duelist. So maybe he's on the right path actually. I take it back on my statement. He got it. Never mind, he got it. My bad. He just took an early internship. My man is investing into his future by taking off from school. You gotta respect it. The gang for this season is the Fua duelist. And just like in season 1, Hakua gets gaslighted, or I guess brainwashed. If you want to say he got brainwashed, you could technically say that if you believe in brainwashing. Regardless, into being Shobu's op. So one of the main goals this season is to ungaslight their friend to being less of a jerk again. And the guy who's doing the gaslighting slash brain control is Zakura. No, we're not doing that spell again. Zakura's goal for this season is to become the literal Duel Master. But in order to do that, he needs to find a magic stone, apparently. But honestly, I think you just need to win like a tournament or something and get the official title. I don't know, I don't play competitive, but I feel like that's the way you're supposed to do it. And you know, not the way he's going about it. Also, the title lets you take over the world. And how does that work exactly? You see, Anyhow, Shobu being Shobu can't let the game his dad abandoned him for be used for evil. So he stops Zakura and saves his friend. And by proxy, I guess the world, you know, I'm pretty sure that was like a secondary thing for him, but he still did it though. So that's pretty base Shobu. And at the end of the day, Shobu doesn't get a trophy or money or even his dad. Yes, that's right. At the end of the day, all Shobu actually gets from saving the world is the right to play against other children in card games. So, you know, gang violence is undefeated and there is no moral to this story. And that is all we get for Duel Masters over here in the West for the time being. And obviously, the game didn't play exactly like the anime. So here's where things get a bit weird, because if you ever watched Duel Masters thinking you'd learn how to play, psych, you don't. While in later seasons like Charge, the anime starts actually having rules that are found in the game and they go by them. But if you would just watch season 1, you would generally probably be kind of confused on how to play the game. And hey, me personally, I respect the style over substance choice, but long-term wise, I feel like this is one of the reasons why it didn't take off over here in the West. As I mentioned in my chaotic video, when a show slash anime is nothing like the product it's promoting, the product's gonna feel lackluster just by existing. Because as a kid, why play a TCG with all these rules when I could just watch the show with all the cool stuff and they're just kind of making up stuff as they go? So I'm gonna do something for you that Duel Masters never did for me as a kid. So here's Duel Masters for Dummies. Not that you're a dummy, but you know, like the book. The objective of any Duel Masters game is to destroy all your opponent's shields and then land one direct attack on them to win the game. A deck consists of 40 cards, no more no less. Each player starts with 5 shield cards placed face down, and both players draw 5 cards as their starting hand. And they decide who goes first, usually by flipping a coin or rolling a dice. Here's how turn structure works. Each turn follows these steps. 1. Start of turn. Untap all tap cards, draw 1 card. Next, you move to your mana phase. You place 1 card from your hand into your mana zone, and any card can be used as mana. Next, you move to the main phase. You summon creatures, cast spells, or use creature abilities. Each of these take mana to do and are relatively fairly unique, and this is where the complexity of Duel Masters really starts to shine. Next, we go into the battle phase, attacking opponents' creatures or attacking their shields. By attacking a shield, the opponent adds a destroy shield to their hand, like an extra draw in a sense. And some shield cards have shield triggers, which is this game's version of a comeback ability. And after you do all this, you go to your end phase. You turn ends, your opponent plays next. You rinse and repeat for the rest of the game. And to win the game, all you have to do is break all 5 cards like I mentioned earlier, and then attack directly, and you win. And after watching the animated show, I can say this, you get a grasp on what the core concepts kinda are, like the mana system, the creatures and spells, and the blockers, and a little bit of evolution. But overall, it doesn't really tell you how complex the system can really be. Like, you're not gonna get an in-depth dive from seeing Shobu fight villain number 3 of Ploop. Like, you're not finna get that, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. The game honestly is rather complicated, and that's a good thing. As an adult, I do like fun, complicated rules for my card games. Unique strategies / playlines make TCGs super fun in my opinion. But here's the thing, unlike Yu-Gi-Oh, where you at least kind of got a vague sense of how duels work, Duel Masters just kept rapid fire jargon that you would not understand if you were a kid and you didn't even touch the TCG. Which is a shame because Duel Masters had one of the best designed TCGs of all time. Games were fast, there was no awkward resource cards like Magic, every card was both playable and a unit of mana, super unique in that sense. And if it didn't come out today in the era of digital TCGs, I think it would have found an audience like Pokemon Pocket or, like I said earlier, Marvel Snap. Not willing to fully disappear after the 2000s, it tried to come up with a revival one last time in 2010. The hub tried to bring back Duel Masters. Yes, the same hub that brought you My Little Pony and Damn Versus. Yes, the the hub, man, that name has aged like milk. Yes, the hub gave us Kaijudo Rise of the Duel Masters. And man, let me tell you something. I had no idea this was related to the OG Duel Masters TCG show. I watched this show when it was airing actually, and I had put money on it. There wasn't a single time that show mentioned a card game, Shobu, or anything related to the TCG. Like, I had no idea there was a connection. And after doing research for this video, like, I can see there's a little bit of parallel, but overall, completely different shows. Kaijudo definitely gives off more Pokemon, Spectros, Digimon vibes rather than a TCG. And I like the show. I like all 3 main characters, honestly. Rei's journey to become a Kaijudo master was honestly really fun. And unlike Shobu, he got to meet his dad, so that's already like a plus off rip. And another point in this show's favor, they had Phil Lamar, like one of the best VAs out here. The only reason I feel like this show actually failed is because it was on a bad network. The hub never had crazy reach. And if they honestly really wanted to, I feel like the hub could have, bro, the name. The hub is such a, anyway, I'm not trying to beat a dead, I guess a dead pony would be more accurate in this situation. Regardless, moving on from it, the show had a lot of potential, but it had literally nothing to do with the OG TCG game, and I feel like that hurt whatever trying to revival they were trying to do with it, because Kaijudo was like martial arts, and fighting with monsters, no one was playing a card game. And while the hub got the lots of Duel Masters over here in the West, Japan's Duel Masters is still going strong. It never stopped. It's a huge thing over there, which is honestly a really cool thing to see. Regardless of your mixed feelings about Wizards of the Coast, they know how to make a good card game, and bare minimum, if you don't want to give them that, they know how to make a card game last. And clearly, Duel Masters had the foundation to last, we just weren't the right audience. And speaking about not finding the right audience, let's talk about these video games that didn't really do much. Like most early 2000s anime games, these were definitely an experience. So here's the deal. Duel Masters got multiple video games across different consoles, from the PS2 all the way to the GBA. These games were the best way to experience the TCG without physically buying it, which, depending on who you ask, is a good or bad thing. But the PS2 game Duel Masters Cobalt, which had full 3D duels with cutscenes that made something feel like an action movie, which is pretty cool, honestly. It played like someone saw Yu-Gi-Oh! Duels of the Rose and said, we can make this weirder. And man, I know some of y'all haven't heard that name in a minute. You're welcome. Just bringing back all the fun memories right here. Now, on the other hand, when it came to the Game Boy Advance games, they were way more faithful to the actual rules, which ironically kind of made them a little less fun. And I see the redundancy in what I've said compared to now. But if you have played some of these GBA games, I know you understand what I'm talking about. While it isn't like the least fun thing in the world, it definitely isn't as fun as just playing the actual TCG. With titles like Duel Masters, Shadow of the Code, Senpai Legends, and Kaijudo Showdown, these aren't bad games, but they just got overshadowed by the sheer power of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Gaming machine. If we're gonna be honest, if you had to pick between Duel Masters and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Tag Force, you're gonna pick the one with Jaden. Give me Elemental Heroes any day of the week over some Duel Masters cards. Avion was cool, bro, and Vercinatrix. I don't know. But if you are one of those diehard fans who still want to play the game in a more modern setting, there is Duel Masters Online. While it's not official, the card game is out there for you to play if you want to play a digital version. There is also Duel Masters Play, a mobile game that is only JP, but there are English mods you can play if you want to play the game. So if you want to scratch that Duel Masters itch, there you go. Now you know where to start. So what's the lesson of this video? Dropping out to be a TCG player is not smart, and card games are a very efficient way to make money apparently. Joking aside, Duel Masters is not a Yu-Gi-Oh clone, nor will it ever be. It is a Magic the Gathering spinoff. So next time one of your friends think they're so smart for knowing, I know Duel Masters, it's that Yu-Gi-Oh clone. Tell them no, it's not. It's actually a Magic the Gathering spinoff. And when you say that, like, sounds snooty, like you just kind of know everything in that one exact moment. People will love that. So hey, thanks for letting me check up on Duel Masters, and I will see you in the next one. Like and subscribe and all of the fun stuff. And y'all take it easy, alright? And see y'all later. Bye.